Hello and a warm welcome to another edition of To The Point. The Government of India recently has launched the Regional Connectivity Scheme UDAN, which seeks to get in more people to fly in smaller towns. What does this scheme entail and what are the practical difficulties? Joining me now is Minister for Civil Aviation, Mr. Ashok Gajapathi Raju.
Well, thank you.
Mr. Raju, let me begin by asking you that is this UDAN scheme supposed to be the real game changer in the aviation sector?
You see, India is a big country, and the multiplier effect of aviation activity on the economy is tremendous. There is a demand. It normally would take about 2 years to stabilize a route. So that's why, to connect unconnected areas and underserved areas, we've given a definition to both. So to connect them, we have formulated this scheme. It has been done transparently. We will be putting it out. State governments are involved. We would like to convert a wish list into a work list.
Okay. So which means that more Hawai Chappal wearing Aam Aadmi will be seen to board the Hawai Jahaz.
That is the secondary issue.
Okay.
The first issue will be the economy of the area.
Okay.
And let this activity kind of go around the country, and that's why the state governments are taken on board, so that it's not going to be a wish list. Like we have so many airports which are non-performing assets. We have no intentions of generating further non-performing assets.
Right.
So what we want is performing assets which will contribute to the economy, which will generate employment and make the common man, enable him to fly. We had done a study also, and the inactive airports had come out of basically two reasons.
Right.
Had emerged. One was proximity to the place of work or stay, and one was price. So all these angles were taken in, and this scheme was formulated.
But since the time the government has announced the launch of RCS, people have been talking about that extra levy which is going to be charged. And all the analysts, are harping whether it was required, whether it was not required, whether you could have done it through a different source. Is it going to be a burden on the flyer? That's my basic question.
Show me a person who likes to contribute for anything. First of all, here in aviation, this is the first time a levy is going to be within the aviation activity. But generally everywhere in the world, nobody likes any type of levy or taxes. There are two realities under any political setup. One is death after you're born, and one is taxes wherever you live in this planet Earth. So that is there. Now, we have decided that this should come about. There was nothing hidden about it. Right from day one in the draft policy it was mentioned,
right,
to the end it was mentioned, and it's going to happen.
But even the airline operators, they don't seem to be very happy, because they are saying that the environment is already quite taxed. You have a fuel surcharge, the user development fee, etc., etc. So there are already so many taxes. So is it going to be really a burden on the airline operator as well as the consumer?
You see, ultimately the consumer foots the bill.
Okay.
Whatever. Even today they are footing the bill.
Okay.
They footed the bill when the prices of ATF was higher, when the excise was higher, everything was higher. They're footing the bill when the things are lower. So there's nothing new about it.
Okay. But the fares, coming to the fares,
Yeah.
they have been capped at about 2,500 for half of the seats in 1 hour flight. I mean, how does it really happen? Are we going to see some kind of a mad scramble when the bidding happens for these 50% of seats? I would like to understand from you, what is going to be the real procedure for it?
You see, there was a scheme formulated. It is being put. Now the idea is to connect an unserved area to a served area, or an underserved area to a served area.
Okay.
Now an aircraft does not go only on one point. To
Right.
one point, because an aircraft has to fly a minimum number of hours
Right.
in a day to make it viable. So the aircrafts will move on a network type of a thing. So how to fit it in? So we will be taking the state governments on board, the airlines on board, because the airlines have to perform.
Right.
So when they come on board, these things will happen. So we formulated a scheme keeping the ATR 72 in mind.
Okay.
The idea is not a subsidy for eternity.
Okay.
Like I told you already, that it takes about 2 years to develop a route.
So are we when
Can
you
I
talk about
have, look, one thing I want to make it clear. If you are going to butt in, this comes in the way of train of thought.
No, sir, you go ahead. You go ahead.
I am not going ahead. You ask your question. Please be civil.
So what I was wanting to ask you, you spoke about the subsidy. That is why I wanted to butt you in and ask you that are we heading towards a subsidized airfare regime, which is normally seen in UK or US or China? Are we heading towards a regime like that?
You see, a subsidy activity is not an economic activity.
Okay.
This is a promotion activity. That's why if you had read the scheme, you would have realized that the subsidy is not for more than 3 years.
Right.
Because in 3 years, if a route can't stabilize, it is very unlikely that it will ever stabilize. So you have to ultimately, this has to come to the economy.
Okay.
It can't be a burden on the economy forever or for eternity. The idea is to get areas which are unconnected, make them connected so that the economy of those areas improve. Now, why are the state governments on board? Because they know where the plannings are, they know where they are going to invest, they know where the tourism potentials are. So they come on board, they have a part to pay, Government of India has a part to pay, Airports Authority has a part to pay, everybody takes haircuts here. So it's clear. So the idea is to make a workable, viable scheme which will become permanent when the viability gap is withdrawn.
Right.
Now this is what we are looking at.
Achha, this Udan scheme also says that the cap on the fares is going to be reviewed periodically based on the consumer price index. How would you really explain it to the viewers? I mean, what is it going to be like?
Consumer price index is the consumer pays. There are other two angles also on it, but that goes on the airlines.
Okay.
Like the ATF and ATF was one, then there was another angle of it, leases.
Okay.
Because lease of aircraft.
Okay.
So these two things, but those will affect the governments, state governments and the Government of India, because what their subsidy amounts will get affected there.
Right.
Here it is the consumer.
Okay. But sir, are you in a position to share at this point of time with the viewers as to what's going to be the exact quantum of the levy? A rough idea or maybe a rough estimate, if you want to share it with the viewers.
We think that we will be able to raise around 500 crore a year.
Okay.
And it should not go to only one part of the country.
Okay.
So what we thought was, if we keep the northeastern hilly tracts as one area, or north, south, east and west.
Okay.
That is this thing. Roughly 100 crores, not correctly to the Naya Paisa, will be the subsidy from the Government of India side.
Okay.
And state governments, obviously, they participate and that will be there.
So which means that a kind of a corpus is going to be created, which is going to be regionally divided?
I don't think we are going to create any corpus.
Okay.
Because as and when the funding comes, it will be absorbed.
Okay. Okay. When you, but sir, coming back to the subsidy point, what you said, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Aviation sector already has a subsidy model which is there on the high traffic density routes, I suppose. So are we trying to have two subsidy models?
No, there's nothing subsidized
for the regional connectivity scheme.
You see, there's nothing as of now. Aviation is a contributor. We contribute to state taxes, we contribute to Government of India taxes. There's no subsidy element in aviation as of now.
Okay.
But the idea is that you should have regional connectivity. In some countries, they've gone in a different models, like Australia has a different other angles of it. But here, we thought that this is the best way of working it out. That's why we opened it for discussion. All stakeholders had their consultations. You will agree with some points, you will disagree with some points. I don't think there will be 100% agreement everywhere on everything.
Okay.
But then by and large, there is a consensus and we are taking it forward.
But when it comes to the aviation market, we've always seen that it's connected to the per capita income, and India still is a country where just about 25% of the population still is not connected to the electrical grids. So is it, many analysts in fact feel that, you know, it could be a case of misplaced priorities because it's a state government, the airline operator, the airport authority, all these have to pitch in, you know, for some kind of a contribution.
You see,
it's just a view. I mean, you can.
You see, there are many views. There's also another side of the view that the middle income category in India is just not flying. If you take economic parity terms of Europe or America, that population is not flying. That's what I said. Our study revealed that there were two hurdles. One is the proximity of an airport, the service, to their place of stay or work, and one was price. Now, if I'm asked to take a drive in a car for 7-8 hours to catch a flight, I'm not going to do it. But so it doesn't work that way. But one thing for sure, there's a multiplier effect wherever this activity is there. There's an effect on the economy.
I was reading a data which is by the aviation regulator, which actually said that most of the licensed airlines, they have overshot their regional connectivity quota, which really means that they've flown more than which is required by the regulations. So is there going to be some kind of a change when you bring in more airlines into this UDAN scheme? Are we going to see some kind of a change?
You see, when that regulation came, category 1, category 2 and category 3 things, there was no flights in those places.
Okay.
So it was a cross subsidy of sorts. As years went by, the demands in those places grew. This is exactly what I'm trying to say. It takes 2 years to stabilize a route. That's why the subsidy is not more than 3 years. The whole thing, you're going around the same thing in different words.
But analysts do, the analysts again, they are saying that it's a structural weakness of UDAN, if they could call it at this point of time, that, you know, the eligible airline will need the subsidy not for more than 3 years. Now, what happens, supposing if a state government gets back and says that, look, we had helped the government to take the UDAN scheme off, and now we need more subsidies. So will the government be in a position to tell the state government something, that whether the subsidy would be increased or not?
You see, the idea is that this should become economically viable within the period of time. So the whole scheme is maximum 10 years till now. 3 years is an individual route. So routes will be adding on.
So, but when you say 10 years, sir, so after 10 years, what happens?
The government of the day will take a decision whether they want to continue, whether they want to. This is not for a thing for eternity. This is definitely not a scheme for eternity. The idea is to bring more people into the system. India has had beautiful growths. In fact, we are the fastest growing as far as aviation is concerned in the world. And we can be the 3rd largest from the 9th largest now in the world, even by 2022. So we want to reach those areas. This has a propensity of encouraging employment, generating economic activity. So we need to harness these things.
When the scheme was launched, you'd announced that the first flight probably will take off sometimes in January. So are we going to see just one flight taking off from a particular airport, or several flights taking off simultaneously from the served and the unserved airports? How is the process going to be?
You see, the idea is the scheme is formulated. So chances are by the time the process goes through, It will take January, and we hope to connect as many as is possible by then. We are not restricting anything right now. Let those things emerge. Of course, there are people who profess doom from day one, and they are working overtime. And it's our job, to prove them wrong.
We are not at all saying that
this is why I said,
doomed.
please don't come in the middle. Huh? It doesn't speak well. This is why I said they are entitled to their opinion, and it is our job to prove them wrong, and we will prove them wrong. That's it.
Mr. Raju, we'd seen in the past that, regional airlines like Air Pegasus, they have been deregistered by DGCA because of financial troubles. So are we going to see, does Udan help airlines like these to get a renewed vigor, or will...
You see, airlines get two streams of revenue.
Okay.
Now it's only one stream. They get from the passenger.
Right.
They get two streams of revenue. So that will be helpful to them. But their books, they have to keep it proper.
Right.
So what is the problem that they are having? Like Kingfisher was a classic thing.
Right.
It pushed up Indian lease prices. So leasing has to be addressed, because that's how the airlines get their aircrafts. So even that is also being addressed. The leasing companies, they want a system where they could repossess their aircrafts if there is a default easily. So all these angles are being addressed.
Okay.
So the confidence levels have to go up, and that's happening. And all this is because the economics in the country is working, and it's working.
Coming to the viability of the routes, earlier we had seen that airline operators were very reluctant, to fly on routes like, for example, say between Chandigarh and Bhatinda, Bombay to Jamnagar. So will this scheme now encourage the airline operators to fly more and more on these kind of quaint routes?
I won't call them quaint routes.
Okay.
It's like, we do have airports, like Gondia, for instance.
Right, right.
No scheduled flight has ever gone there.
Okay. Okay.
So the idea is, arbitrarily you put up airports, then you land up with non-performing assets, and if they perform only, they contribute to the economy.
Okay.
So we are not interested in non-performing airports. We are trying to make non-performing airports as performing airports. We will succeed in a few places. You might not succeed in all places. But your new airports that you're going to take up, unless an airline guarantees it, it's not going to work. So, because you have about close to 400 airstrips.
Right.
So, a wish list, everybody wants an airport in the backyard. It's not going to work that way. The economics has to work.
Right.
So if they can get an airline to guarantee it, to give a bank guarantee, then the government will develop the infrastructure.
Okay.
Otherwise, you're putting money and not getting a return at all.
Right.
And it's not helping the people either.
Okay.
So we want things to work.
Okay.
We are looking at it economically.
Okay. Now, since the number of the RCS seats, they cannot be more than 50%. Another issue is that, most of the airlines, the aircrafts are small, they don't have that number of seats. So is there something which is being worked around on those things also? Because even the smaller airlines, they are saying that, the subsidy which is being offered is not enough. We just have about Air India and SpiceJet, or airlines like Jet Airways, which have aircrafts up to that capacity. So how are we looking at that angle?
You see, a scheme has been formulated, it will be put out. How has it been formulated? I told you right in the beginning. Airbus 72-seater, keeping that aircraft in mind, the scheme has been formulated.
Okay.
Now, each aircraft has a different type of economics going with it. So it will bound to change. So in the bidding processes, these things will come.
Okay.
So at that time, we can have a look at it.
Okay.
Whoever is the least bidder will get the thing. It will be the bidding is going to be transparent. So if you are the least bid, you will get it. If you are not the least bid, you will not get it.
Okay.
Now, why is it you're subsidizing certain number of seats? To increase the comfort level of the airline.
Okay.
So he has to fill his airline. Now, if he feels that this is comfort level is okay to begin with, then because it's an unserved area, he'll get exclusive right to that area
Okay.
for a limited period of time. So if he develops a market there, fine. So I take permissions, I don't sit on the permissions, I work those areas, I benefit, the economy of the area benefits. It should be a win-win situation all round.
Okay.
So that's what we are looking at.
Right. But you were talking about the served and the unserved airports, and given the fact that the first flight is going to take off in January, you must have already started preparing. Like, how ready is the infrastructure, for these kind of flights?
You see, we have infrastructure already. The low-hanging fruit would be the existing airports.
Right. Okay.
You yourself have mentioned a few names. So the low-hanging thing, I think it will start there. I think those out of that 31, 32 airports which are inactive,
Right.
at least about 10 will come in almost straight away. That's what I think. Then the other things have to come.
Okay.
So where infrastructure has to be put in, that takes a bit of time. So if they meet the criteria, we put infrastructure there. So an airport is like a road, it's infrastructure. The airline is like a bus, you can say. So if you have a road where nobody takes a bus or a truck or a van or something, it becomes totally inactive.
But Mr. Raju, can you just define a little, for the flyers who are going to fly, that, when this bidding for the 50% seats happen, there's not going to be any kind of a mad scramble, for which the flyers have to really worry as to how they'll get the seats at that particular price. It's just a very common man's view, which I would like you to clarify on this.
What is it that you would like to clarify? Today also, you go into any aircraft, you see some people have bought seats at one rate, some people have bought at another rate.
Okay.
So the subsidized seat
Okay.
is available, it can be bought.
Okay.
Now, once the subsidized seats are over, the airline is free to sell.
Okay. But again, I'll go back to what I said in the beginning, that Aam Aadmi in the Hawai Chappals is probably going to board the Hawai Jahaz.
Welcome. Why should any Indian citizen be denied? It's welcome. The idea is you should get more people flying.
But any practical difficulty which you really feel is there, as a hurdle, maybe, to roll out the scheme? You don't see any practical?
You see, it's my job to
or
identify
I would rather change
hurdles.
the word.
It's my job to identify hurdles and get strategies to overcome those hurdles.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Raju, for coming on To The Point.
Thank you.
So that's it on this episode of To The Point. See you next time with another personality. Goodbye and thanks for watching.